Are you an American or are you Israeli? That is what a lot of people in this country cannot seem to decide. Ben Shapiro, my other Israeli friend, many people who claim to be Americans and American citizens and ostensibly want what is best for America can't seem to get over the fact that our government is controlled by a foreign government and is on the verge of truly causing a world war. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be nuclear war, but I'm going to make the argument today about why by this time, I don't know, at the end of the summer, we could be engaged in what's almost a hot war, meaning a full-on military conflict, not just a proxy war like what we're doing in Israel right now and what we're doing with Ukraine and Russia. I'm talking about troops on the ground in Iran fighting Russian troops. Truly a nightmare. Besides going nuclear, the worst case scenario. All right? So, what do we have now? Today is Wednesday, April 17th. Iran launched a nuclear retaliation, a retaliatory attack. Sorry, did I say nuclear? Iran launched a drone attack on Israel a few days ago in retaliation for Israel bombing Iran's embassy in Damascus, Syria, and killing two of their generals, a bunch of innocent people. The U.S. refuses to condemn it. They refuse to condemn it. They say, oh, we're not sure it's an embassy now. Here's how much the government, your government, doesn't give an F about you and thinks they're not even trying to lie anymore. It's like when I used to get caught cheating, and by the end I was, hey, honey, what's this DM? It's just some girl I'm screwing. You stop caring. They do not care about you. They're making things up. They say, they get a softball question from the press. Hey, so tell us about this embassy that Israel bombed in Syria. That's kind of off limits, right? That's like a no-no. It's essentially attacking foreign governments. It's if you attack an embassy in a foreign country, that embassy is considered part of that country that you're attacking. They say, no, it's not an embassy. Okay. So they refuse to condemn that, right? So what does Iran have to do? They have to retaliate. Any country would retaliate. We would retaliate. Israel would retaliate. Mexico would retaliate against a foreign country, an enemy, bombing one of our embassies, even if it wasn't in our own country, on our own soil. So Iran sends 300 drones carrying old missiles and shoots them into Israel, right? Now, Iran is very well armed. I want to point out this country is strapped now. This is not the Iran of 2002. This is not the Iran of 1992. This is a highly sophisticated, very well armed, very well equipped military. They could have hit Iran. They could have killed, they could have hit Israel. They could have killed Israeli citizens. They have the capability to hit the middle of Tel Aviv if they wanted to. It took, out of 300 drone missiles, they say billions of dollars were spent by the U.S. and by Israel with the help of Jordan to shoot down those missiles that Iran launched at Israel. So make no mistake, and they still managed to get a few of them through and destroy military targets that they were aiming for. So this was clearly not a mistake. Iran clearly was sending a message. They didn't want to kill anyone, which is a lot more than Israel can say. Isn't that funny how the West is supposed to be this moral guiding light of the entire world, and it's Iran now. It's countries like Iran that are saying, hey, We protect human life. We don't want to kill anyone, but we just can't have our bases and our embassies being blown up. They're the moral ones. How did that happen? So they said, we're not going to kill any Israelis. We're just going to blow up some military targets just to let you know. Just to let you know that we don't want the funk, but don't start none, won't be none. So, and of course, the press is condemning this retaliatory strike. And the U.S., as of 2 days ago, they asked Joe Biden, would you support an Israeli strike onto Iran? He goes, they can do whatever they want. He's taking the gloves off. He's taking the gloves off. And as of right now, they are in Congress pushing another aid package through. So they're giving these guys billions of dollars to go escalate. Now, what happens? What happens when Israel strikes Iran? That means the Russians have to get involved. Russia will not sit back and allow Israel and the U.S. to destroy Iran. They have political ties that go back generations. They're now very, very interlinked trading partners. They can't allow it. They won't allow it, right? Not to mention Turkey, which is the leader of the Muslim world now, de facto leader. They have the biggest military, one of the biggest militaries, I think just behind Israel. They have the biggest military in the Middle East. They have incredible air power, good naval power, and they're linked to China. Turkey is now the second biggest importer of Chinese goods. The Chinese need their goods to keep flowing to Turkey through the Strait of Hormuz. And guess what? If Turkey gets involved in the conflict, that strait is going to be shut down and it's going to block the oil shipments that China needs so badly to their country. So China is going to have to get involved. So this escalates very, very quickly if Israel strikes Iran. Hezbollah, very well armed, barely made a dent. Israel's barely made a dent in that attack. But clearly, Benjamin Netanyahu and the War Council, they're in the mindset, in my opinion, of we are going down. They are a rabid dog that's being pushed into a corner, and they're slobbering with rabies, and they're saying, we're going down and we're taking the rest of the world with us. And the United States, instead of pulling on the leash and saying bad dog and spraying some water on it, is being led around the collar by the dog. The dog is the owner. And why is that? Of course. Why? It's because our government has been co-opted, literally wholesale corrupted by the Israel lobby. Now, you've probably heard of AIPAC, which is the biggest lobby, but there's actually way more. There's 51 Israeli lobbying groups in Congress that jockey for power and influence in Congress. Chuck Schumer, he said Bibi Netanyahu is the greatest threat to peace in the Middle East. This is what Chuck Schumer said last week. Chuck Schumer himself has received $2 million from the Israel lobby since 2018. You go look all this stuff up. It's Democrats and Republicans. Literally hundreds of thousands of dollars for low-level people in the House of Representatives, up to millions of dollars for people in the Senate, like Chuck Schumer, high-ranking members of their parties, millions of dollars. So, and they accept that money because Israeli lobbyists will come to them and say, hey, if you don't take this money, I'm giving it to your opponent. So what would you do? You play the game in Washington. You take the money and you shut up and you say jump when they say jump. That's what they buy politicians for. And you're seeing literally the mechanisms of the handcuffs that are placed on politicians by dark money. And by the way, what's so insidious about all this, what's so incredibly creepy about all this, is that it's American companies, hedge funds, private equity firms, big-time New York elite power players that are feeding this money to the politicians and using it and funneling it through these lobbying groups. So, because they don't consider themselves American, they consider themselves Israeli Jews living in America, and the diaspora, they're the diaspora, right? So they connect with this country, Israel, so deeply, even though it's like an 80-year-old country. It's not even 80 years old. Most people living in Israel now, citizens of Israel, their grandparents weren't even born there. So you've got, and in America, you've got this diaspora of extremely powerful Israeli linked people that identify with the ideology of Israel, yet you're supposed to be an American citizen and you're corrupting and subverting your own country, the country where you live, the country where you were most likely born, Ben Shapiro. And so Andrew Schultz, when he goes on Flagrant, he says, I'm starting to think Ben Shapiro is being paid off by the Israel lobby. Guess what? That's not even like a theory. That happens all of the time. The media is co-opted by the Israel lobby, not just the politicians in Washington. If you look up the New York Times the other day, there was a story that broke by The Intercept, and they ran it on Breaking Points. Shout out to Crystal and Sauger on YouTube. The Intercept leaked a New York Times memo that came from the bosses at the New York Times to their staff writers. They said, words to avoid using when you talk about the Israel-Palestinian conflict and the bombing in Gaza. Don't use words like slaughter, genocide, massacre, etc., etc. We don't want that coming from our voice, they said. But then, wouldn't you believe it? Go read about the words and the verbiage that the same New York Times writers use about Ukraine and Russia. And what do they say? What do they say? I ask you, what do they say about Russians attacking Ukrainians? Slaughter, genocide, ethnic cleansing, brutality, savage. Oh, wow. Now the shoe's on the other foot. How stupid can you be? And by the way, I'm yelling at my dad now through the audience. This is my parents are in town the other day visiting. God bless them. There's just some hot button issues that you shouldn't talk about with your parents, right? The one that just completely sets them off. And that's for my father, anything to do with American imperialism. He's just that guy. He's for it. Hates Trump, but loves imperialism. Trump, the only person, probably since Clinton, that has not gotten us into a full-on hot war. And yet he's the evil one. He's the one that wants to bring down American democracy. But nothing, not getting through to you, Dad. Anyways, so it's telling though. It's very telling about the mentality and about the hooks that the Israeli lobby has into our government and into our media. They're holding it hostage. They got the bag of money up here. By the way, this does not help Jewish stereotypes. I'll just point that out, okay? They're not helping, the old tropes about, Jewish people controlling the media. No, of course. Like, this is not a Jewish thing at all. There's many, many incredibly progressive, good Jewish people in this country who are against what's going on in Gaza. Look up this stat, Brian, because I don't want to be wrong. I believe when polled a couple of years ago, now 1 in 4 American Jews think that Israel is an apartheid state. Now, I want Brian to look that up because I don't want to be wrong about the facts. And look, the tide is turning against Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu is right. The world is turning, and that fact was correct, by the way, about that poll. The world is turning against Israel and the United States. They're sick of it. They've had it. That's what, and guess what? These Middle Eastern states are strapped now. They're strapped, and they're not having it anymore. So Benjamin Netanyahu is very right now. But instead of coming to a negotiated settlement, instead of discussing a real political future for the Gazans, for the Palestinian people, what's happening now? They've gone completely. I'll say, how would you describe this? I mean, a guy who's saying they're not taking me alive. That's their mentality is we will not be taken alive. They're bank robbers who got jammed up. You know who they are? They're Robert De Niro in Heat. You get caught robbing a bank at the end, and they're not going back to prison. They're going to shoot it out with the cops, right? They're going Wild West style, lunatic behavior. What's going on the West Bank now? They're allowing settlers to massacre the people in the Gazans, the Palestinians rather, in the West Bank, right? Their society is crumbling, literally being pulled apart at the seams. Their economy has contracted at least 20%, at least, but that's probably a low figure since the bombing started in October. So their society is completely fracturing, right? Just like ours is to a certain extent. But it's like the U.S. has a death wish along with Israel. It's like they want to bring the world. They want this to happen. Now, people in the comments say, well, what about Hezbollah? Hezbollah has been attacking Israel since the bombing happened. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. I mean, look, their hostilities on both sides have been ratcheting up for the last 20 years, right? Basically, since Hamas took over Gaza, and any hope of a two-state solution has completely evaporated. But there's a lot of people say that Hamas no longer wants to rule Gaza. They want the Palestinian Authority to basically take it back over. Now, I can't confirm that. But what I know for a fact is that they're not even trying to come to a political solution. It is a mess. But that doesn't, and it's complicated, that doesn't give Israel and the United States to drag the rest of the world into something that could look like nuclear war. A war between the U.S. and Russia fought with proxies in Iran, right? So Israel and Iran battling and being funded by, on one side, the U.S., and the other side, Russia, would have, even if it wasn't nuclear war, horrendous consequences for our economy, which, by the way, is already in recession. Doesn't matter what they try to spin. The layoffs are already happening. They can't keep the truth back. Layoffs are already happening. Inflation has turned. You see gold's moving up. That means our dollar just keeps losing value, right? So a war in Iran with Russia, that could speed up the currency crisis we're coming into. And so, and Biden is finished. I mean, you think Bibi Netanyahu is finished? Biden is done. They're not even trying in the mainstream media now to even fake the fact that Biden has any shot of being reelected. Okay? If you don't want Trump to win, you better vote for RFK, because Biden has no shot. So it's almost like, and Biden is acting almost like Bibi's acting. He's like, yeah, I'm going down, dude. I will not be taken alive. I'm shooting it out. They just keep making one horrible decision after another, and it's like inertia. Once an object gets moving, it becomes very hard to stop that object from moving. It just keeps going until it's out of control, and then the whole thing collapses. The whole thing blows up. He's done. So it's very it's very hard to look at people like Ben Shapiro, like shadowy Wall Street hedge funds that corrupt en masse the government of the United States that's supposed to be representing the people. They work for us. Most people in America, and Brian, if you could look up any kind of statistics to back this up, don't want more aid to foreign countries. They do not want a foreign war. They want to get out of Ukraine, and I would bet you a majority of people, if polled, do not want to be involved in wars in the Middle East. Okay? Yet the government does the opposite. So you can no longer call that a democracy when the government that's supposed to be representing the citizens that put it in power no longer act in the best interest of those citizens. Your country ceases to be a democracy. So I would argue that the people that continue to support that government, whether it's Ben Shapiro, the mainstream media, and the money that corrupts that government, I would call them traitors, is what I would call them. Man, you cannot take Johnny after he's done yoga and meditated and is feeling as blissful as a white girl from LA that lives in Venice Beach, get him talking about Israel and not let the dogs out. It's traitorous. That's what that is. That's how I can't find another word for it. You know what I mean? And the people, of course, the citizenry that backs this up, right? My father, people that boomers, really. Boomers are a big part of the problem in all of this. My father, God bless him, he consumes one kind of media, news. Most of it from MSNBC, a lot of it from CNN, and then he watches Fox so he can hate it, right? And many of you watching are the opposite. You've got parents, all they watch are Fox News, and they hate MSNBC. It's all one and the same token, guys. It's the uniparty. You've heard Tucker talk about the uniparty in government. The media has a uniparty, a unimedia. They act like they're different, but they're all being funded by the same money and by the same people who do not care if what they're doing is crumbling American society from within and causing untold suffering and consequences on a global scale for everybody else in Ukraine, Russia, and the Middle East. They don't care. It's a money pot. Now, Brian, I got Brian doing a lot of stuff over there. Unsurprisingly, in this last week, when you go look at the stock market and you go look at the companies on the NASDAQ, guess who's up? Guess whose stock is up big time? Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, weapons manufacturers' stocks are in the green, baby, through the roof. And guess who owns a ton of that stock? Congress. You know, their money managers are saying we're a buy. We are buy on Raytheon, on Lockheed, on Honeywell, right? Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this girl can't miss. Nancy, you're better than Warren Buffett. How did Nancy Pelosi find the time to serve in Congress for 50 years and also beat the market better than Warren Buffett? Sweetheart, you're not even a genius. You're a Rembrandt. Brian, do you have some stats over there for me?
The latest thing I can say, 45% say the U.S. government is spending too much on aid for Ukraine. Compared to 52% in October. The last overall poll that I could see, it was still majority in support.
The majority of the United States is in support of what?
Foreign aid.
Of foreign aid. Wow.
Foreign aid budget.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, look, I was wrong about that stat. According to Brian,
That was like a year and a half.
This was about a year and a half ago, though. So that a lot has changed since then. Most people, when asked if the U.S. is spending too much money abroad or in Ukraine? Most people say yes. So look, you people are dense. You people are thick. You're dumb as a box of rocks. This is why the majority of people are going to be living in abject poverty when the recession hits, because you're too stupid to even know that the wool's being pulled over your eyes. My audience knows better. But yeah, a lot of people pulled. These are probably a lot of boomers too. It's like people that say, yeah, the economy's doing great. It's like, it doesn't matter what they say anymore. Most people know the truth. So the truth is that the U.S. and Israel have now become rogue states. A rogue state is a state actor, right, in the sphere of political affairs, right, international politics, that now is thwarting all the rules and laws of the international community. That's what a rogue state is. This is what we used to call, during the George Bush years, we would call Venezuela and North Korea. Okay? And Iran. Those were the rogue states. Today, 25 years later, it is the US and Israel that are absolutely giving the middle finger to any kind of diplomacy, international law, decency, and just kind of the taboos, like blowing up an embassy. We don't give a damn. So this is what you see. You see everybody else, and in that time, as we've been turning more and more into this rogue, quasi-democratic, but mostly corporatocracy that's controlled by shadowy money, you've seen all these other countries start to push out the U.S.
Someone wants me to remind you that interest payment on our national debt
Yes.
officially passed the amount we collect.
So, we'll read questions at the end because we can't hear you. But yeah, absolutely. Somebody brought up in the comments that the interest payments are now, by the way, the third most expensive thing we pay for. It goes Medicare, Social Security, and then interest payments. You're right. We are accumulating about $1 trillion of new debt every 3 months. Okay. So now you're at a point where if you're going to go to war against Iran and the Russians, that money printer, that could turn into $2-3 trillion in debt every 3 months. So now what you've got is a recession, maybe a depression at home. You have a military that's underfunded, under-equipped because you're sending all the aid to other people. Now, with that kind of debt, you're looking at a currency crisis. Because now what's happened is all of these countries, like the BRICS nations, are no longer trading in US dollars. If there's any that still are, trust me, after we go to war with Iran, nobody amongst those new, big 6, big 7 countries are going to be trading in US dollars. So now what you've got is a downgrade. You're going to have a full-on credit downgrade of the dollar, and you're going to, it's quite possible, guys, right now we are living in Weimar Germany. We're living in Germany of 1928, 1929. In a year and a half, if we're not careful, we could have inflation that's in double digits. So no, you don't know. You just don't know. You could be having loaves of bread that cost you $50. And then all bets are off. Now we're talking about a complete breakdown of law and order. We're talking about a bureaucracy, a government body that treats the U.S. Treasury like Zelensky and the oligarchs are in the Ukraine, basically plundering the Treasury to later jump on a private jet and fly out of the country. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that something like that could happen in the U.S., just the way that it happened in Argentina. Probably 3 or 4 times in the last 20 years. You see presidents literally getting airlifted from their version of the White House out of the country with suitcases full of, billions of dollars in American cash. That's how states fall. That is how states fall. Israel from the outside, even though it looks like, it cannot be defeated, right? These systems of oppression and injustice and government autocracy, even if they seem infallible, like the United States, right? Like Israel, the way that South African apartheid seemed, that government was so strong, right? It seemed like how can these Nelson Mandela and these rogue, underfunded, poor people, what match are they for the guns of this brutal apartheid regime, which, by the way, was funded, a big in part by the U.S. and, Britain and all these other places that designated Nelson Mandela as a terrorist, right? They called the Liberation Army, they called them terrorists, just the way they call Hamas terrorists and Iran terrorists, right? And look what they're doing. They're attacking people. Right. Okay. But so they thought they were infallible. That government fell, in a matter of a year. It only took, once you finally get that wall dislodged from the ground, it falls over really quickly. Okay? So, and by the way, what was the apartheid regime in South Africa doing in its final years? It invaded Botswana. It invaded all these other little countries around South Africa. This is what desperate nations do. So you see Israel doing the same thing, okay? They're going to have a bombing campaign in Gaza, a bombing campaign, and maybe a ground invasion into southern Lebanon. And now they want the smoke with Iran. Gloves are off.
Funny enough, Palestine has a statue of Nelson Mandela in it.
And so you could see that the head of the snake turn on itself, because now you're going to have the Houthi rebels starting to hijack again in the Red Sea, right? And now you're making the soaring cost. By the way, if you're in oil, start buying oil, because you're going to see oil and natural gas start to skyrocket, putting more upward pressure on inflation. So the U.S. is going to have to get involved, and Israel. But again, Israel doesn't care because they want chaos, because they are on some kind of jihadist, ultra-religious mission to go down in flames. Just the way the radical Muslims are. That's how radical Bibi Netanyahu's government is. So you see how this system could really collapse if Jordan and Egypt and Turkey, certainly Turkey, and Hezbollah and Russia and China all gang up on Israel. Dude, there's nothing the U.S. can do short of shooting nuclear weapons. And quite frankly, I don't put it past these geriatric psychopaths in government. I would argue that you should vote for Donald Trump, if only to prevent the absolute mania, the psychopaths that are running the government. From, it does not matter if it's Chuck Schumer or Lindsey Graham from the Republicans, and all of it's 80% of the government co-opted and funded, making money from the Israel lobby, making money from the weapons lobby and the kickbacks. They will shoot the nukes if it comes down to it, because that's what desperate people do. And we're in big trouble. So my point is, if you see how easily apartheid South Africa collapsed, and how Israel society is collapsing before our eyes, you can see how it could happen in the U.S. Now, the U.S. has a lot of advantages, of course. We are oceans away from that mess, right? We have a gigantic economy. And yes, we still have the world's reserve currency, right? But with all those factors that I laid out, in the next 5 years, that could all change. And I would argue that the biggest thing is the reserve currency. That is what has already kept us from completely imploding and becoming a depression and having our currency look like Zimbabwe, where you got to push a wheelbarrow full of cash to go, buy a pack of gum. The only reason that it's prevented us from going that route is because we have the world's reserve currency, so we can get goods on credit. People will ship us our goods. China, wherever else they make our products, will ship us our goods because we've got the money that everybody wants. But guess what? The geniuses, the Democrats that you voted for, my father voted for Biden. I think Biden's doing a pretty good job, he told me at dinner the other night. They are the ones that went ahead and froze all of the foreign assets, the American currency that was legally and rightfully owned by Russians. They froze those and they seized them. And they're going to start doing that in Iran and other places that we have conflicts with, that we started. So now people, holders of US dollars around the world, are going to say, I got to get out of this. And it's proof. Look at what the world central banks are doing. They're buying gold. They're getting out of dollars, which, by the way, you should be buying gold. We're going to be having Peter Schiff, the gold bug. The man himself, Peter Schiff, is coming on the show. And he is basically going to reiterate everything that I'm saying. They're buying gold. They're getting out of US dollars. I don't know how long it's going to take. It could be 2 years. It could be 5 years. It could be as long as 10 years. But once the America is no longer the world's reserve currency, this is when, unless we clean up our act, we could look like a third world country. You could have real coups in government. I'm not talking about January 6th. I'm talking about actual military takeover of government bodies. I'm talking about cities in complete ruin from economic depression, from, migration. That could stop the migration crisis, though, as a depression in the U.S. Hey, I'm a kid from Venezuela. What do I want to come to the U.S. for? I could do bad here, That is what is going to kick all of that off, is when we can no longer print money, right? So my point is, I think this, because of all of these reasons that I've laid out, I think in relatively eloquent ways, I'm just a stupid comedian at the end of the day. I spent time in prison and I smoke a lot of weed. But all that being said, I think I made some pretty strong points. I would say if RFK cannot get on the ballots that he needs, by the way, because we do not live in a democracy, and that's allowed. States can literally say, we think this guy's going to win and we don't like him, so we are going to keep him off the ballot. Does that sound like a democracy to you? Doesn't to me. But if he's not able to get on enough ballots, okay, to win the presidency, I would say it is your duty as an American citizen that wants to see the preservation of this union to probably vote for Trump. Because I'll tell you why. Trump, sociopath, liar, big liar, but at least he feels the way the wind's moving when it comes to public opinion, right? What happened the other day during a speech Trump was giving? They started chanting "Genocide Joe, Genocide Joe." This is at a Republican rally. They're yelling "Genocide Joe." They're yelling the same thing that college students with bones through their nose and pink hair are yelling when it comes to the bombing in Gaza. Republicans, people that still wear MAGA hats, big fat ladies named Peggy from Iowa, chanting the same thing. Genocide Joe. And you know what Trump says? They're not wrong. Now, does he believe it's a genocide in Gaza? Who knows? Who cares? He doesn't care. Politicians don't, Arab politicians don't care about what's going on in Gaza. But they listen to the people they represent, the citizens, because they want power. So at least Trump listens to that. The Democrats, Biden, Anthony Blinken, they don't even listen to it. They say, no, it's not a genocide. I don't care what you think. It's not a recession. No. Let them eat cake. And they pat you on the head like the good little dog that they think you are. They pat you on the head. It's not a recession, dude. It's not a recession. Robust profits, not a recession, not a genocide. That embassy, you said that was an embassy that they bombed? That the rest of the world is like saying, oh no, literally Iran bombed, or Israel bombed an Iranian embassy. We looked into it. It's not an Iranian embassy. It's not technically an embassy. Yeah, it's not technically an embassy. It's a place where government people go to converge. It's not an embassy. It's a consulate. They don't care what you. That is the scariest kind of government that doesn't give a damn what the people are saying. That is autocracy. That's what scares me. Trump did not have. Did Trump? This is me talking to my father now. We're on Sunset Boulevard in some like sports bar. You know what I mean? Okay. I'm going to try to stop yelling. Dad, did Trump, yes or no? You know who I am? I am Denzel Washington in the movie Philadelphia. Answer me like I'm a 4-year-old. Did Trump get us into a war from 2017 through at the end of 2020 when he left office? Yes or no? No, he did not. He did support the Saudi Arabian continued bombing in Yemen, which, by the way, Obama ratcheted up and Biden is, of course, doing now. He did do that. Now, in my opinion, Trump was a novice politician, right? That much was obvious. He surrounded himself with war hawks. He surrounded himself with managers and people in government that wanted to run things, foreign policy, business as usual. That was his downfall. Those people betrayed him. Those people probably colluded with the CIA in spreading the Russia hoax, as we now know. I'm not just saying it was a hoax. Russiagate, it is the fact, was made up, right? We know that now for a fact. So Trump he made a lot of mistakes as president, and he said a lot of wild stuff, but he did not escalate foreign wars. That is a fact. And by the way, I'm not saying that the end of the U.S. empire isn't an inevitability. It is. It is. You would have to cut government spending so much. Like, you would have to do what Vivek Ramaswamy is doing. You would have to cut, the government bureaucracy, right? All of this redundancy by like 75 to 80%. You would have to raise interest rates to the point where we would have a economic depression. You would have to we're in so much debt now, you would basically have to cripple the entire country in order to straighten out the balance books. So, Trump printed money too, right? He put us down this, kept the business as usual when it came to loading up debt, right? But he certainly didn't do it like Biden. Certainly not. So, I'd like to, at least as a man of some affluence now, praise be Allah and the Connect and my producer Brian, as a man of some affluence, I would like the party that is the US, I'd like it to go on for as long as possible. But it's inevitable that our currency will someday no longer be the world's reserve currency, and we will become like England, a faded old empire. And we will just be kind of this old guy that's chugging along and not really leading the world in economy or foreign policy. And that's okay. Everybody has a run. It's like being a kingpin. You had a run. Marlo had a run. Prop Joe had a run. Shout out to The Wire and everybody that got that reference. But when you have psychopaths like Biden and the war hawks in government that are completely being played like puppets by the Israel lobby and by the weapons industry, you're going to accelerate that decline and speed up the chaos tenfold. So if you would like this party that is the United States to go on for a little while longer, I recommend not voting for the people that are running things right now. That is what I recommend to you. That is what I'm saying to you. Brian, let's go ahead and address some of what we were talking about earlier. Did you look up any of those facts? Did you have anything you wanted to elucidate?
I mean, Trump is
Talking about Trump right now. He should be mic'd up. Oh, Mike's picking him up. We're using a boom mic.
Trump says that he supports Israel's war, but that they're losing the PR.
Mm-hmm. But that's a brilliant. This is why Trump is a brilliant politician. Is when he went on 60 Minutes. Oh no, he went on Israeli news the other day and said, "Yes, I support your war, but you got to wrap it up. We need peace." He's playing both. You know, he doesn't want to alienate that rabid, very well-funded dog that is Zionism and the Zionist lobby, right? But he's also bringing along the citizens, me and you, saying, hey, this has to stop. We can't expect an American leader to come out to ever get elected by saying, hey, we're cutting all foreign aid to Israel. We think and we know that Israel is not only an apartheid state, they are now a rogue criminal state. We are going to completely end the war in Ukraine immediately. We're going to sit down with Putin. We're going to allow him to take the Donbass. We're going to allow him to, he won the war, so winners get to keep the spoils. We are going to completely gut the U.S., stop dark money from funding the elections. We are going to, get rid of NATO or stop funding NATO. We're going to stop doing what's not in the best interest of the United States. You just can't talk like that, or else, the powers that be, the deep state, whoever you want to call them, the uniparty, they're too powerful. I mean, they took Trump down. So, you gotta, to get elected, you've got to be walking that fine line, right? But I would prefer that. I would take the indifference. I'll take the isolationism that Republicans seem to eschew. I would take that any day over a Democrat who wants to spread democracy. You know what I mean? Because we've seen what spreading of the democracy really looks like. It doesn't work. I am not pro-Russia. I'm not pro-Iran. I'm not even pro-Hamas. I'm very much an American. I love democracy. I love freedom. I love free markets, capitalism. But a lot of the world culturally is not even like that. They don't want to be part of the American system. And you know what? Good on them, right? Now, there are losers in every society. If you're a woman that loves talking like me and showing off her face, Iran is not the place for you, But they don't stop people from leaving either. LA is, you probably know people here in LA, hon. We've got a white Mercedes waiting for you. So, and Russia, Russia is, I love Russian history. I love a lot of Russian culture. I love Russian people. But you don't want to get involved in politics very much over there because you could end up dead. That's, and I don't agree with that system, right? But it seems to be working for Russians. People, Americans, you don't even know what you don't know. You're so ignorant that you and we can't even begin to imagine what we don't understand about other countries and other people. It doesn't give you the right just because a government doesn't allow free elections, right? Which, by the way, they don't in Ukraine and they don't in Israel. It doesn't give us the right to drag the rest of the world into misery and death. Okay? And we are the U.S. It doesn't give us the right to do anything but do what's in the best interests of the people. So that's just what it is, guys. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. So it's going to be very interesting to see these next 6 months because Biden has no shot of winning. And RFK even said that. He goes, I'm no fan of Trump, but Joe Biden has no chance of winning Therefore, I feel like I'm electable. I feel like I can win. And I actually think he's right. I just don't know if the parties and the system will allow him to win. I thought Bernie Sanders was going to win. I thought Bernie Sanders would have won. Donald Trump back in 2016 said, yeah, I don't want to debate Bernie because that dude's got real fans and real policies. And we say a lot of the same stuff. So, yeah, thank God the Democratic National Party, the DNC committee, thank God they undermined him in all of these different states and stole the election from him and gave it to Pete Buttigieg. I'll take on Pete Buttigieg all day. I'll debate Hillary all day. So, but it's stunning. And Britain is the same way. Britain, you know, they asked the government over there. They were arguing the other day about the missiles, the drone missiles that Iran shot at Israel, and they said they wouldn't even answer the question when somebody brought up, "Hey, this was a retaliatory attack." They said, "Nah, whatever." Like the way that they dismiss, at least totalitarian countries lie. They try to lie. In the West, they don't even give you the dignity of making up a lie. They say, "Didn't hear your question. Next." And they keep it moving. It makes me want to, it makes me want to do some crazy stuff. That's what gets my blood boiling. They say, "We unconditionally condemn this attack on Israel by Iran," even though they're like, no. Iran tweeted, by the way, Iran threw, and this is according to Colonel Douglas McGregor, who will be on our show very soon. Iran told the United States what they were about to do. They said, "We're about to shoot drones in retaliation at Israel. You will not be harmed. You will not be touched. Just stay where you're at. Don't F with us. We're not going to F with you. As a courtesy, we'd like to let you know." So we know that Iran has the capability to harm civilians in Israel, but they didn't do it because that would be immoral. That would be a violation of international law, which Israel does not care about because they are a criminal state. This is my contention. So Iran absolutely has capabilities to strike the heart of Israel. Thousands and thousands of precision warhead missiles. They sent their old bombs as a warning to Israel and to the West. And I got to be honest with you, and this is, we'll wrap up here. What is the point of talking about all this, Johnny? You say we cannot control our government. We cannot control what these animals over there do. I'm just a guy watching your show faithfully. Thank you. Leave a like and a comment. What can I do about it? And what's the future? I don't think they're going to change course until the election. I don't think that the Democrats or any of the hawks in our government are going to restrain Bibi at all. I think it's going to keep getting worse. I think by the time we hit November, we will be in a full-scale funding. I don't think we're going to have troops on the ground in Iran, but I think you will see full-scale bombing campaigns by Israel with the support of the U.S. in Iran and back and forth, bombing in Israel from these other countries, plus our front in Ukraine. So I think we're going to have that. I think you're going to see gold and cryptocurrency at all-time highs by this time next year because we are going to be in such massive inflationary periods and will be for probably 10 years. I think you're going to see inflation that I think you're going to see $6, $7 gasoline, especially in places like California, the way we saw them in 2021 and 22, because oil is going to be at such all-time highs because, of course, our debt and the money printing, right? But also because of the war, You're going to see these huge supply chain issues. You're going to see the reaction by the markets and by the asset classes. So I would say if you're an investor, if you got like a guy like me that has sitting on a little cash, you should be positioned in both. Okay. Peter Schiff is wrong. And I'm going to tell him to his face when he says that Bitcoin is a bubble that's going to crash. It's not. We are 3 or 4 days away from the halving. It's resetting and it's regrouping right now. It's going to dip down into the 50s. Okay. Then you're going to see it start an upward trajectory that is not going to stop. I mean, it's not going to stop ever. It's going to be the medium of exchange in 15 or 20 years, but you're going to see a bull run on this for the next 10 years. By this time next year, I think you're going to see a Bitcoin from 150 to 200. You should be buying that, and you should be buying gold. I think Peter Schiff is right. He says gold ounces could get up to $20,000. They're at $2,300, $2,400 right now. I don't know if it'll get up to $20,000 that quickly, but I think by this time next year, they could be up to $4,000, $4,500 maybe. So you need to be protecting your money. You need to be making money, and then you need to be taking that money you make and putting it into assets that are hedges, not only growth, make you money, but hedges against inflation. Because I think you're going to see stock markets bottom out, even though you're not going to see them raising interest rates or lowering interest rates rather before the election, because they said they can't do anything that's going to embarrass them. They can't stop the war in Ukraine. They can't stop what Israel's doing, and they can't reverse course on quantitative easing. Right? They say, you know, they're just going to basically leave it flat. They're going to leave interest rates where they are. So you're going to see markets. You're going to see a market correction and inflation go like this. So the economy is going to go like this, down. Inflation is going to go up. But in that inflation, you're going to see asset classes, oil and natural gas, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies in general, gold, silver, copper, going up and up and up, real estate going up and up and up, right? That's what happens in inflationary times. You see assets, especially hard assets and inflation hedges, just getting more valuable. So it is a good time to make money, especially if you're an investor, you know. So not everybody is going to be losing, does not matter what. I don't think you're going to see this apocalypse. I think thanks to the miracle that is cryptocurrency, technology, Bitcoin, coupled with the hedges that are gold, I think you're going to see a beautiful new world despite the end of the American empire. But there's just going to be a lot of messiness that goes into it. But in the messiness, you can make a lot of money. When there's blood in the streets, buy up everything. It's the old investment adage, and that's what I encourage you guys to do. And I encourage you guys to vote for somebody that's going to stop this madness, no matter what else the policies are, right? And that's what I would tell you to do. Anything else? Any questions we want to add, Brian? Anybody in the chat? What are we at right now? Yeah. Let me do some plugs if you're still watching. I'm going to be on the road. First of all, go like and subscribe to the Connect. This channel, please. If you haven't subbed, what are you doing? Hit that subscription button. We're dropping new content all the time. I'm banging out videos. We're doing lives. We're doing all sorts of cool stuff. And as well as the Connect, I'm going to be in the road doing stand-up comedy. On June 20th, I'm going to be at the Tempe Improv in Tempe, Arizona, Phoenix. Come out to that, headlining one night. Come on out. Then June 21st and 22nd, I will be at the Big Laughs Comedy Club in Dallas, Texas. Come on down to that. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, go to johnnymitchell.biz to get your tickets. That's it. We'll see you guys on Friday doing another live. Thank you so much for the support. My name's Johnny Mitchell. Peace out.